Welcome to the Leading Second podcast, a space to help church leaders thrive in the second chair. Today's conversation will help you embrace your calling, get it right with your pastor, and lead in an uncommon way. Let's jump in.
Well, Leading Second, welcome back to the Leading Second podcast. My name is Brandon Stewart. We are so excited you're here today for a very special episode. Today, we are launching our new book. I cannot believe I'm saying that. I feel like an imposter to say that. But after a couple of years of work, we're so excited. It is here. Lead It Like You Own It is now available for you, for leaders everywhere. We're so excited and feel really honored and thankful to God for the opportunity to do it. And we're going to take a few minutes here on the podcast to just talk about the book. We're not going to go through book content. We actually have multiple courses releasing today as well for the book, for you to unpack the content individually or with your team. I figured what we could do here today is just do a little BTS. Just talk behind the scenes on why we wrote the book, where it's coming from. And I want to specifically show you some of the main tension statements and lessons from the book that I'm so excited to get to unpack with you now the book is here. I'm particularly excited about this book. This book, for me, represents, I think, probably the greatest wisdom and lessons that I've received in my first 25 years in ministry. The summer of 2026 for me is 25 years, and I think this is about as good as I could package it. I wanted to bring it all together and share my convictions about the second chair and ownership and what's needed in God's house, and also talk about some of the gaps that I feel like we've seen along the way. We're going to do this in a couple parts. Today, we're going to cover the first half of the book, parts 1 to 3. In our next episode, we're going to cover parts 4 to 6. The book naturally breaks up into a couple halves. And then there's a 7th part of the book that we're not going to cover. You're just going to have to read the book to get it. How about that? At the core of everything we're going to talk about today and in the book is one word: ownership. And that word changed my entire leadership journey. So this whole, I'm not going to share the story right now, but this whole book for me began the night in 2011 when I was on our church staff at my home church at the time, Champion Center in Tacoma, Washington. I'm so proud of my years there and to have been a part. And Pastor Kevin and Sheila Gerald are still our pastor's ministry oversight today. I'm so proud of my season there. Between a stint at a beautiful local church in Minnesota and at Champion Center, I had been on church staff about 10 years. And in late 2011, due to financial situation at the church, I ended up losing my job. It was a situation I never expected to have happen. It absolutely changed my life. It changed everything about the trajectory of my life for a couple of reasons. It definitely launched us into a new season of serving the local church, which years later would lead us to launching Leading Second. But I think the bigger impact for me of that night, of that moment, was I had and was given, I think, by heaven, the opportunity to shift and become a son of the house, become an owner of the house. Mainly, my pastor was going through a tough time. I knew he did not want to be in that meeting. I knew that he did not want to be letting me go. And he actually, funny thing about that conversation, you can listen to the course and read the book to get the full story. But the funny thing about it was he actually released me to go find a job at another church because he didn't want to stand in my way. Just because he couldn't hire me, he didn't want to stand in my way of what God might be wanting to do, which I thought was very fair of him, but very unusual in ministry. And I don't know what came over me. I said what I was feeling. I said what my faith was. But I remember looking at him and I said, I'd rather volunteer here than be paid anywhere else. It was my way of saying, if you're going through something tough, I'm going to own this with you. And I'm going to figure this out with you. And that was the night where we architected a new season for us, working with local churches, and everything changed that night. It's, when you're writing a book, one of the things they do is they ask you, what's the moment that inspired the book? What's the moment that inspired your story? And for me, that was it. It was the night where I think I truly became an owner of the house. And so we've written this book, Lead It Like You Own It, in hopes that you would see the significance of the second chair and that you would shift to build the church from anywhere on the team. We offer 7 shifts, actually, for you to consider in your church leadership journey. Let's dive in a little bit and just talk a bit about the first half of the book. Part 1, which I need to back up for a minute. The book is written in 7 parts. It's actually, if you'll do it, it's meant to be read over 7 weeks or studied as a group over 7 weeks. Just so happens, you might think someone designed it. Each part has 7 chapters. So if you want to think of it like this, it's a chapter a day for about 6.5, 7 weeks. I wrote it that way because I want you to take this book slow. There's so much packed into it. There's like 44 chapters. I want you to absorb this, to think about some things. At the end of each part is a personal analysis, an individual analysis, some team activities. I mean, really believe God can do a work in our lives if we'll slow down, if we'll meditate on it, if we'll absorb the context. So just so you know how it's written, 7 parts for most of the parts, 7 chapters for the part. Let's talk about part 1. Part 1 is called Second Chair is Not Second Class. Second chair is not second class. The tension statement, each part is written around a tension statement. The key tension statement for part 1 is this: we've come to believe a lie. Leadership begins with a title. Here's the truth. Leadership can happen anywhere by anyone. I love it. We offer you what's called the leadership shift. We offer you the opportunity to shift from seeing leadership as coming from a title and position to seeing leadership as coming from ownership, leading with a spirit of ownership. I think I wrote this particular part of the book, and why we started there was because I see too many people confused about what leadership is. I think we make leadership out to be something it's not. I think we think that leadership comes with a title, and we ask ourselves, can I lead without a title? Here's one, not to press too many buttons today, but I feel like we confuse leadership with compensation, that we need to be paid to lead. First of all, I think people just see a paid role more significantly, which I think is a false equivalence. But then also, the paid staff, that's a really dangerous place for us to get into, because are we willing to go the extra mile when we're not paid? Stay a little late, go the extra mile for the project or for the team. So mixing compensation and leadership is dangerous. Then throughout the book, we also talk about other dynamics. I think we tend to think of leadership as influence. And I don't inherently disagree with the definition that leadership is influence. We were taught that over the years. However, it's become a challenge in our current climate with social media. I don't think that definition of leadership foresaw the rise of the influencer in social media. So now you have the influencer. Is being an influencer, does that automatically make you a leader? I don't think so. I don't think the ability to mass social media following and social media traction makes someone a leader per se. We could equate leadership with charisma. I mean, we could equate leadership with a whole lot of things. I am proposing something different, and I believe there's a more biblically faithful way to look at leadership. I think the Bible is clear that every joint supplies. The Bible is clear on the priesthood of the believer. The Bible is clear that there is a ministry calling on every believer. In the church, in the marketplace, the local church is called to ministry. We are priests, kingdom of priests, it says in Revelation. We're priests that serve our God and Father, that minister before the Lord in his house. And so I think through part one, I'm hoping that people are going to see the significance of the second chair, see that they can lead. I now have many more years on volunteer staff in church life than I did unpaid. And I think I probably have done more significant work and more significant leadership as a volunteer staff member than as a paid staff member. So that is part one for you. Second chair is not second class. I pray that you'll just bust wide open the definition of leadership and realize the common thread of leadership, I believe, biblically speaking, is those who own God's purposes with a spirit of ownership. A couple top lessons really quick from the part, and then we'll move on. In part one, we talk about the myth of the cage, that second chair leaders feel caged in by leading from the second chair, by the tensions of the second chair. We talk about how we view significance coming someday, coming somewhere down the line, maybe in a better title, better role, more compensation, higher chart or higher hat on the org chart. I believe it's the right and necessary starting point for all of us on our journey. And if you're a young leader, I pray that you will immediately fall in love with the second chair, realizing that for most of us will spend our lives leading from the middle. Hope you received that today. Let's dive into part two now. Part two.
Hey, we want to say a quick thank you to Goff Companies for supporting today's episode. They partner with churches and leaders to turn ministry vision into mission-aligned spaces, from planning and financing all the way up through construction. They only build churches, and their team includes pastors and leaders who truly get the ministry side of a building project. So if you want to learn more, you can go to goffcompanies.com.
Maybe the bleeding heart of the book, or my main premise for you, is part two. Part two is called Leadership is Ownership. Leadership is ownership. Our key tension statement for part two is this: leadership is often seen as a means for personal gain, but kingdom leadership is measured by serving others. This one was an interesting one for me. I really thought long and hard about how to define ownership and leadership. Like, what does it mean to be a leader who's an owner? And when we think of ownership, I think we tend to think in regards to personal benefit. We own something because it benefits me. I mean, when we lived in the Seattle area in 2020, we bought our first home, and we owned that in hopes that someday when we sold, we would benefit from that. There would be equity there. The investment would have been a good investment for our family. So we typically equate ownership with something that benefits us, something we possess, something that's mine. But what if ownership in God's kingdom is actually measured by serving others? What if that's the standard for leadership? Why did I write this chapter? I wrote this chapter because our world is in an ownership epidemic. No one seems to own anything anymore, feels like to me. I mean, our entertainment is streamed. We don't actually own anything. When was the last time you bought? I mean, I'm going to show my age here. You bought a CD or you bought an MP3. No, you just stream it all. Now, you temporarily use it and then lay it down when you don't need it anymore. It's given birth to this subscription culture, this transactional culture. Cancel if it doesn't work out for you anymore. Stay as long as it benefits you, but walk away when it doesn't. And then, especially since the pandemic, we've seen the rise of this low ownership work ethic. A strong work ethic used to be universally admired, used to be a trait to be admired in people. Today, you see just as many people online celebrating quiet quitting, acting your wage is another term, not letting the man take advantage of you. There's kind of this low ownership bar. I said this in the book. I don't know if it came across as snarky as I meant it in the book, but I talk in the book how when I was up writing in the morning. I was up really early and I just wanted to get out of the house. I needed a change of space. We were also starting to move at the time, so I needed a change of scenery. So I would go to the only coffee shop open. I won't name the coffee shop. It might have a green logo and it might be a national chain. And that I bring that up because that chain has been in the news the last couple of years for declining sales and for softening customer engagement. And so as I was writing these, chapters on ownership, I'm watching, okay, let me just see how the employees are owners right now. And I just saw really low ownership. I saw lines forming while employees were not in a hurry. I saw employees talking to each other on their little microphones at the drive-through locations rather than talking to customers. I saw, registers backed up while employees just focused on other tasks rather than meeting customer needs. Focused on my job, my task, my role. I worked for that company back in the day. I was taught something totally. Back in the day, we were empowered to do whatever we needed to do to slide over, to meet the customer need, call the line, get people in and out in 5 minutes was our main goal. But somewhere along the way, the ownership quotient went away, and so did sales. And I just found that interesting. I think we have an ownership epidemic. People don't know what it means to own something, certainly not own what doesn't belong to them. And in the kingdom of God, everything we have, first of all, is from God, so we don't actually own anything. We're stewards. We're not, that's the biblical word, is stewardship, not ownership. And then even beyond that, we are given things by God's delegated authority in our lives, our pastors. And so nothing we really own is ours. We have to own what isn't ours. We have to own what belongs to the Lord, own what belongs to somebody else. I just think it's going to define people's leadership. Your ability to sacrifice and go the extra mile on something that doesn't have your name on it is the mark of the second chair. Leadership is ownership. So we just invite all of us to make that shift from what benefits me to what serves others. In a couple key lessons real fast from part 2, we talk in the book about the hired hand versus the owner. John 10, verse 12, Jesus says the hired hand is not the shepherd and does not own the sheep. He uses the word own. So when he sees the wolf coming, he abandons the sheep and runs away. We talk about the ownership equation. I give a definition and kind of a math equation for what ownership is, what it could look like for you and your team. I know this is kind of funny, but the picture I have in my head is I tried to write a math equation, almost like a little card you could put in your wallet and pull it out and memorize it every Sunday morning, like just memorizable. Is that a word? Memorizable. And just something you could remember to really write the equation of ownership on your heart. And we talk about the kingdom commitment of placing the interests of the church and team ahead of our own. Part 2 is a challenging part. We don't stay safe in the book. We call us all to sacrifice and invest in ourselves rather than personally benefiting from the mission. Which leads us to part 3 and the, I think, kind of the conclusion of the first half of the book. Part 3 is titled The Initiative of an Owner. And we talk through the initiative shift. Our tension statement for this part is this: hesitation cages a second chair leader. Owning with initiative unlocks the brilliance of leading from the middle. In this part, we take down what I think is the Goliath of the Goliath facing second chair leaders, and that is hesitation. I'm going to call it out. When I was researching for the book, I put together some beta groups of second chair leaders and just talked to leaders. What are you facing? What do you see? Where do you get stuck? What are your challenges? And by a landslide, their answers would point back to one primary place, and that was hesitation. I don't know what to do, so I don't do anything. And I believe one of the key shifts we can make to shift into ownership is shifting from a leader that hesitates to a leader that leads with initiative. Sounds easy, but how do you do that without getting out of alignment? How do you do that without forging your own way? How do you act with agency and still maintain alignment on the team? I just think it's a big deal. So in part one, if you remember, we talked about the cage. Well, the cage is back. And the cage is hesitation. Now, we know the cage doesn't exist. It's a myth. But too many leaders stay in it. I mean, I'll be honest. I've had many, many days in ministry where I wanted to do something for the team, for my pastor. I just didn't know how to get it done. I didn't know if it was my job to do it. Didn't know if I had permission to. I didn't know how to work through organizational lack of clarity to get it done. I didn't know if I'd get in trouble. I tried to, I'm being a little facetious, but I didn't know. And I just think I'm not alone on that. I think so many leaders hesitate. We want to own. I'm kind of operating on the idea after part two that we want to be owners, that we're willing to be owners, but we just don't know how to take initiative to do so. So in this part, we first of all talk about not burying your bag, the bag of gold. We talk about the parable of the talents in Matthew 25, the servant that was reprimanded, penalized was the servant who hesitated. He buried his bag. He didn't lose the bag. He just hesitated. He did nothing. And that earned him the harshest rebuke. We talk about how Joseph didn't hesitate. He developed a pattern of not hesitating. And that led him to be a dream interpreter for Pharaoh. And now Joseph literally interpreted dreams. I think that's, and I've taught for a long time, that's one of the key markers of a second chair leader is to be a dream interpreter. Take the dream of your pastor and make it a reality. But how do you do that without stepping on toes and running over everybody? It's an art. And then we talk about a subject. I've never heard it said this way. I'd be willing to be corrected if I was wrong, but I've never heard it said this way. I talk about a concept called aligned agency. Aligned agency. Agency is noted in research as being one of the most necessary skills for second chair leaders. The ability to act independently, the ability to take initiative, move something forward. It's considered one of the highest competencies for middle leadership. The problem is agency is typically equated with autonomy, taking autonomous agency, just acting. And I don't know that I love that. That sends my spidey senses up a little bit, that there's something better for us, because I think the last thing God's church needs is a lot of people taking initiative and everyone going their own direction, losing alignment potentially. Alignment, on the other hand, is the ability to work together, to walk together. But alignment doesn't necessarily imply action. So I was left with a quandary. Which is it? Is it agency or is it alignment? So I came up with the idea maybe it's both. So aligned agency, I'm calling that the secret sauce of the second chair. If we can master that, there's brilliance in the second chair that is yours for the taking. If you'll work through the nuance of the second chair, you can take initiative, you can lead boldly, you can lead confidently, and you can have incredible impact. Not someone who pushes their own agenda, but also not someone who sits idly by. Someone who can navigate through the tension well. That is part 3, the initiative of an owner. I hope you've enjoyed just kind of getting to I kind of view this as like we're sitting having coffee, we're talking, we're having a conversation. Hope you've enjoyed getting a little bit of the BTS on why we wrote this book and where it's coming from. In our next episode, we're going to work through parts 4, 5, and 6, and I'm going to build some framework for leading from the middle. We're going to talk about the 3 areas that we need to be considering taking ownership of if we're going to be effective owners on the team and build the church from anywhere on the team. Leading Second, we love you. It is such a privilege to serve you, to know so many of you, and even to those we don't know. I commend your faithfulness. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your ownership. Thank you for the extra mile that no one saw. I pray this book edifies you, encourages you, and helps you run your race strong. Let's come back next week for another conversation on Lead It Like You Own It. God bless you.
It's our honor to serve churches and leaders across the globe. We equip ministry leaders with the coaching, events, and resources needed to embrace their calling, get it right with their pastor, and lead in an uncommon way. You can visit our website, leadingsecond.com, to learn more about how we can come alongside you as you lead from the middle, from the second chair, for the second chair.